According to Genesis 3:19, is it wrong for someone to be cremated? Is our question for today.
Wow, that is, it's a question that I have received several times. People wondering about, is it wrong, to be cremated versus just being buried,
right?
Which is our typical type of funeral that we have whenever someone passes away. So, heartfelt question. A lot of times, Anthony, what I'll do is I'll take them to passages like 1 Samuel 31. In 1 Samuel 31, we have Jonathan and Saul who have died in battle, and the enemy had come and they had placed their bodies on the wall there at Beth-shan. And then the men of Jabesh-Gilead came and they took down the bodies and the sons on the wall of Beth-shan, and they came to Jabesh and they burned them there. And the reason I go there is because that's God's anointed. That's the one that God chose to be king over Israel when the people wanted a king. David wouldn't even so much as put his hand on Saul. Right. And the fact that God's anointed was burned, they burned the flesh, is an example of a way that someone, what happens after they die. And so that gives me comfort. And that's usually what I'll take people to. But the Bible doesn't really condemn or condone any type of burial.
Yeah, and even in the passage that they use in Genesis 3:19, as it says, in the sweat of your face you shall eat bread till you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken, for dust you are, and to the dust you shall return. So it doesn't say anything or condemn cremation or for one to be buried under the ground. It's just simply saying that you shall return to the dust from which you were made. And we know that according to Genesis 2, verse number 7, God says he made us from the dust. And so likewise shall we return, but it doesn't have any bearing on the idea of one being cremated, it being wrong or sinful. We know the ancients, as you've already mentioned, have in times past burned bodies and burned their bodies. And you would like to think that if something like this was sinful or wrong, that Paul or some of the writers that were in our New Testament would have warned us and would have told us about it, but we don't read about that. And so therefore, there's no place that we could point to that says that we're wrong for doing such. And so.
Right. And in fact, both Paul and Peter, they kind of equate our bodies. They call it a tent. And so something we're going to put off, something we're going to do away with. A tent is not a permanent dwelling. Right. And so the most important thing is the soul. And in fact, we see that in Genesis chapter 35, verse 18, whenever you see the soul leaving the body, it says because they died. And that tells us, which is the most important thing, is that our souls are taken care of, that we have made the right decisions so that we will go to be with God. Now we're going to have a celestial body, a heavenly body, but we don't know exactly what that is, but it's certainly not this physical flesh.
That's right.
And so, the manner in which we dispose of the body, I think the most important thing is that it's done with respect, but other than that, there's no command or example that we do differently.
Right. Now, if it is the case that one is to cremate the body with the soul or spirit still being attached, that's considered murder. So that's wrong.
There is a difference in that part of it for sure.
That's wrong because the person's still alive when that takes place. But if the soul and spirit are separated from the body, that means that person is dead. And we know that the spirit goes back to God, who has made them. And so,
amen. That's exactly right.
It's all about preference.
Yes.
We're talking about this.
Amen.
All about preference.